On TV Concierge, the Ringer staff delivers a guide to the vast streaming landscape by discussing one show or movie per day, including premieres, the latest surprise Netflix hits, periodic check-ins on favorite TV shows, new movies available for streaming, and the host's favorite shows to watch right away. Check out TV Concierge exclusively on Spotify.
Life is full of things to manage. Your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
This episode of The Press Box is brought to you by 3M. You may know 3M for Scotch tape and Post-it notes, but their technology helps improve people's lives in many ways. 3M has accelerated their global production of N95 respirators to support those in the front lines of the pandemic, producing more than 95 million respirators per month in the U.S. Learn how 3M is helping the world respond to the COVID-19 pandemic at 3m.com/COVID.
David, a lot of people have been guest hosting Jeopardy in its post-Alex Trebek phase. One of those people was Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. What I want to know is, what do you think of Aaron Rodgers and who else should get a crack at hosting Jeopardy?
Aaron Rodgers is just amazing. I mean, I knew that he had a sort of effortless charm from various video podcasts and podcast appearances he's made. You know, his commercial work was good, but it's kind of hard you can't necessarily extrapolate out from that. I don't know if it's a media training or there's something in the water, but man, NFL quarterbacks just the best quarterbacks just are very good at this sort of thing. But specifically to this, Aaron Rodgers didn't have to be good at this. I mean, he could have been totally fine at this and just passable at this, and everyone would have just eaten it up. He's very good at hosting Jeopardy. He's really, really good at it. And of all of the hosts, I think what you realize is, of all these guest hosts, we all say we love Jeopardy, but we really loved Alex Trebek. You need, without the sort of arch presentation, it really loses something. And Aaron doesn't have the exact same presentation by any means as Alex Trebek, but he has a little bit of magnetism that's sort of separate from the show itself. And I think that's really important to the format. I just answered that question way too earnestly, I think.
What about LeVar Burton for Jeopardy host? What do we think of that movement?
I like LeVar Burton. Again, I think he would be a very passable host for the show if the point was just continuing the show. It's sort of like the Meredith, what's her name? Meredith Rivera takes on the Meredith Vieira takes over Millionaire in the afternoon edition or whatever. He would be fine in that role, but I just think you need something that's just kind of reminds people that the show is on.
Can I read you the lead of the New York Post item about LeVar Burton potentially hosting Jeopardy?
Oh, God, please.
Take a look. He could get booked. Written for us, is it not? Coming up on today's show, we answer a big old bag of listener mail, including questions about Greg Gutfeld's new Fox show, Mike Pence's book deal, and Paul Pierce's ejection from ESPN. All that and more in the Press Box, part of the Ringer Podcast Network. Hello, media consumers. Brian Curtis and David Shoemaker here. David, if it's Thursday, that means it's time for a little
listener mail.
We're going to get our timing down one of these weeks. Topic number one is Greg Gutfeld. Gutfeld, of course, is a veteran of The Five and Red Eye on Fox News. He has a new comedy show called Gutfeld! Exclamation point. And the Gutfeld logo, as numerous people have pointed out, looks exactly like Jim Davis's Garfield logo. A first very elemental question. Do you think Greg Gutfeld is funny?
Oh, man. We're going to get into this real definitional conversation here. I think Greg Gutfeld is humorous. I think that
Okay.
I think that his demeanor can lend itself to humor and hilarity. He would be a fun / funny guy to have a drink with, or his personality would. But when you get down to brass tacks, and I think his show is pretty good evidence of it. He's not like just a natural comic.
He's less funny guy than sarcastic guy.
Right. And to be a good sarcastic guy, you kind of have to have good material.
Yeah, where Dennis Miller ended up is where Greg Gutfeld started. You're not making jokes per se. You're just kind of raising an eyebrow at things. Joe Biden, pretty old, huh? Look at him. Too old to be president. It's not a joke, but you're right. It's humor adjacent, but you are not carrying the rock humor-wise. And I think that's actually the first and biggest problem of Gutfeld, is casting sarcastic guy as a guy who can do a monologue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you and I do not start the press box every week with a monologue.
No.
And there's a reason for that.
Well, we do. We just don't hit record until it's over.
That's right. We don't share it with the world. The reason we don't is because that monologue would not be funny.
No. And it's not just it's not just sarcastic guy, because the sarcasm is a big part of the shtick. But as you watch the show, it's also sort of inside joke guy, right? It's like the sort of like is like the accumulation of a million like bad Twitter jokes seems to just like be what passes for humor. And I don't mean that as a total slight, but it's like it really is just like bad tweets. You know, you can get likes on tweets without actually having to be able to deliver a punchline. But like nobody cares. Like no one is going to laugh at Al Gore rides in a private plane. One of my favorite points of reference for Republicans, despite the fact that like someone that might go over well on Twitter, or like despite the fact that everyone that you know makes snide comments about that every now and then. It's not. It has to be. It has to be fresh, and it has to actually be funny. It can't just be, this is a thing that we all kind of make fun of off camera. And it has to be different and better.
As offensive as Donald Trump was, when he stood in front of a crowd and rifled off all the familiar Republican conservative subjects and sort of, targets, he knew he had to have a joke about them. He knew he couldn't just say Al Gore private plane, haha.
Yeah.
He knew he had to make a joke. Often it was a terribly offensive joke that, just should have never been made by anyone. But he knew he had to say something.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't just name check it. And Alex Shepard, in his review of the show for the New Republic, which I'll reference a few times here, points out that Gutfeld is kind of doing a quote unquote comedy version of what Fox News is already saying.
Right.
So Sean Hannity says a thing, Laura Ingraham says a thing, and then Greg Gutfeld just says a slightly jokier version of the thing. For example, here is a bit from what I believe was his first monologue in episode 1 of Gutfeld.
All right, here we are again, a brand new show and a brand new Greg. I'm as giddy as Kamala Harris explaining kids in cages.
What? First of all, you mispronounced the name of the vice president of the United States on your first show, in apparently your first joke. And number 2, explaining kids in cages. What does that mean? Was that written on the teleprompter? Explaining them? What? And as you say, that's not a joke. That's just something people say on Fox News.
Yeah.
There's not a punchline there of any sort.
No, I mean, certainly is there. I would love to know what the writer's room situation is for this, because whoever is working there has done them a real disservice. I mean, probably it has something to do with, it all trickles up to the top in that case too. But I mean, part of what, a comedy writer's room should do is just suggest 100 jokes for everyone that makes it on the air. Watching the Greg Gutfeld show, you're very much under the impression that just the first thing that occurred to anybody became the final joke.
Yes. Here's another one. He showed a picture of the Easter Bunny costumed character at the White House. And then he says, well, that's where Adam Schiff's been. What? I know Adam Schiff is like, again, a popular target on Fox News. I don't know why that's funny.
Has Adam Schiff been missing?
I don't know. We don't watch enough Fox News to know, obviously. We've talked about before how liberals wasted a huge amount of time and capital trying to clone Rush Limbaugh.
I'm so glad you brought this up. Yes, go on.
Conservatives have wasted even more time and capital trying to clone Jon Stewart and his Daily Show. They want so bad to have a Daily Show, just like liberals wanted to have this obnoxious take no prisoners radio host who was just doing his thing all day. They want to have their own Daily Show.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working.
No.
It's not working at all. So maybe we'll just not do a Daily Show.
Well, I mean, it's if that's the attempt here, it's just really bad. I mean, but I think, obviously there's an element to which Gutfeld is a star on the network. There's probably in so much as one can be. He kind of has his own lane there. There's probably not a lot of downside on doing this, but it's just not the Daily Show. It's not even like, it's much closer to it's not even a Tonight Show. It's like Fernwood Tonight. It's like a bad parody of it. Taken as a parody, it's kind of funny.
Tonight.
No, I know Fernwood Tonight was brilliant, but it's like it feels like it is exclusively referential, right? Like it's like the monologue only exists to reference the form of the monologue. It is not this heady, but it's like it seems like it's an accidental commentary and almost nothing else.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a monologue. If you're going to try to use Greg Gutfeld in this format, should it just be a panel show?
Yeah.
Where he's kind of the cocky, mildly funny leader of the panel?
Yeah, where you can ask a straight question with a smirk on your face, or then kind of hit the walk-off at the end, but you don't actually need a live audience responding, right? I mean, he'll just, if you watch The Five, or watch Red Eye, which was sort of where his comedy chops sort of came to the state they are now. Like, he would often get the last word going into commercial, and there was just like very rarely a joke there, but it was delivered as if he was telling a joke, much like what we're seeing on Gutfeld, right? I mean, it was the affect of telling a joke. And, maybe to a room full of people that are desperate to find their own Jon Stewart, that's what you think you need. It's more like you need the form and not the substance. Certainly not a lot of other people with that form hanging out in the Fox News building, I'm sure. So, I guess I can see a little bit of the logic, but it's just, I don't know how you could do something this kind of interesting and seemingly put so little resource into it.
I think what you said just a second ago is what's so jarring when we see these clips on Twitter is that it has the grammar of a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has the lead up. It has item. Joe Biden did this. This thing happened. But then the punchline is not really a punchline. Sometimes it's not funny. Sometimes it's just not a punchline.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like people that have watched tons of television, but can't can replicate kind of the sounds they hear and the rhythms they hear, but can't replicate what happens on television. Though on that note, I would like to say something mildly in defense of Greg Gutfeld.
Ooh, okay.
Network late night shows are also not funny.
Okay.
They are less not funny than Greg Gutfeld.
Mm-hmm.
But they are also not funny. And if you watch Colbert and those shows and have watched them over the last couple of years, there's a lot of Orange Man bad humor that is at least structurally similar to Greg Gutfeld, Joe Biden old humor.
Yeah. I think that the real problem, besides, we said before, is that there's this expectation that that anyone watching the show is like so ingrained in conservative Twitter or whatever else that you like get these jokes that literally nobody else is even aware or subjects being discussed, right? And so at least when you're making Orange Man bad jokes, that's like part of the national conversation, even if you disagree with it. And the other network late night shows, just to go back to what you were saying about Rush Limbaugh, I think when we talked about Rush Limbaugh, I said that the error was assuming there were all these there was this huge liberal audience for talk radio, for political talk radio, when in fact those liberals were they were listening to Howard Stern, right? The liberal audience for radio already had other radio shows they were listening to. They weren't desperate. There weren't these people desperately waiting for that. And I think that in so much as there are people who are out, there's a big audience out there desperately wanting a conservative late night show. They're probably already watching Jimmy Fallon, right? It's like they're like in some sense the political lines have already been drawn in network late night, right? That like Colbert is going to kind of be more on the liberal side, and
Kimmel too.
And Kimmel too. Yeah. Right. One sort of a satirist, and one at times very poignantly for liberal causes. But and Kimmel's sort of, and Jimmy Fallon sort of, the other option. I think there's people watching him, but I mean, that said, I guess the ratings weren't bad for our friend Greg.
They were not bad. According to The Wrap, he got an average of 1.6 million total viewers, which doubled CNN's 11 p.m. Eastern total viewership, which proves something you and I have said over and over again about Fox News, and it's not our unique insight. It doesn't matter who's on Fox News.
Yeah.
Fox News is like the Patriots, or at least the Patriots until last season. You just replace the person and they go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know who else was number one on Fox News? Greta Van Susteren.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly and all these other people that are gone, and they're still number one because it doesn't matter who you put in those slots.
It's sort of, Greg Gutfeld is basically another way of looking at this. He's basically like the MyPillow of late night shows, right? He's
okay.
He's not as good as a real late night show, but for someone who desperately wants to believe in this late night show, they can find cause to believe it. They will tell you that it's funnier, it's just as good, whatever else. But also, there's the replacement level aspect of the whole thing, right? Those MyPillow commercials are like the only things that run on Fox because there's nothing else there. It's just like if there's a gap in the commercial order, it's just filler from Mike Lindell pops up on the screen. And that's, the same way. It's in some sense, everything is on Fox, but particularly this is just sort of like replacement level content, and
which a lot of Fox is.
That's what I'm saying. The whole thing is just like it could be like, I'm not sure that,
it just what's important is that it's conservative.
Yeah.
What's important is not that it's good. It's that it's a Fox News show that is conservative in outlook.
Yeah.
And that will rate.
Well, how much rather, wouldn't it be better? Would it have been way more entertaining if they had someone who wasn't an obvious choice for this do the late night show? Like, wouldn't you just love like Brit Hume with a whiskey doing like the Fox News Tonight Show?
That I'd watch. Absolutely.
But even if it was someone who was just deeply like really interested in doing a good job, right? Like if it was like Megyn Kelly doing the late night show or something, like it could potentially be a lot just significantly better. It just seems like such a train wreck. But I guess the point is it doesn't matter.
So you think Brit Hume would come out and he would be not trying to do, I don't know, Jimmy Kimmel or Bill Maher, but he'd come out trying to do Steve Allen or Tom Snyder.
Exactly.
Hello,
Tom
grab
Snyder,
grab a colored teeny and watch the pictures as they go flying through the
air. They should put us in charge. That'd be fantastic.
The Stephen Roderick had a good tweet because they showed the lineup of the first episode of Gutfeld, and it was Eric Trump, Fox personalities Tyrus and Kat Timpf, and and off the top rope, Walter Kern.
Oh my God.
Roderick tweets, every generation gets the Algonquin roundtable they deserve.
Oh my gosh.
Also, I would like to take issue with one line in Alex Shepard's New Republic review. He called this undoubtedly the worst late night comedy show in television history. I don't know. Did you ever see The Magic Hour with Magic Johnson?
Yeah. This is when we start rifling through all the failed late night shows of our youths and even our young adulthoods. Remember when Alan Thicke had the late night show where he like played guitar in the commercials? Yeah, listen.
Pat Sajak.
Yeah.
He went against Johnny. I don't know.
The lesson with late night shows is that, one, it's really easy to hand them out because there's an endless, there are more and more channels. There's a lot of open slots at 11 p.m., right? But it's really hard to pull off. It's a lot easier to get a late night show based on some concept of celebrity than it is to do a lot of other things. But it's not for everybody. It's a really high degree of difficulty.
If your device, whatever device you have, your phone, your television, could only play one show for the rest of your life, and it was Gutfeld or Water's World, which would you have it play?
Oh, that's so hard. I guess Gutfeld just on the just because there's going to be some guests.
It's daily.
More variance, I guess, not with the format, but you get to hear some different voices. I don't know. It's just too hard.
It's daily instead of weekly.
Yeah.
So at least you get more content than you would from Water's World.
And listen, I do believe that if all you had to watch is Fox News, you'd probably by 11 o'clock p.m. on any given night think that Greg Gutfeld is a pretty funny guy.
Yeah, maybe so. Thanks to listeners Andrew Graining and Zach Brooks for those questions. Ross Keith asks us, do you see CNN or MSNBC attempting to put some type of comedy show late night like Fox News has done with Gutfeld? Yeah, it was called Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny.
Yeah.
It rocked. It should still be on the air. David, we got another edition of Mike Pence Watch because we have some actual news this time. The former vice president has signed a deal to write 2 books for Simon & Schuster. Mm-hmm. Simon is paying Pence between $3 and $4 million, according to CNN's Brian Stelter. What do you make of the Pence book deal?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, obviously, there's some logic behind signing, if you're signing up Stephen King, because if Stephen King's a free agent, you're signing him up. Sure, sign him to as many books as possible. But for the most part, in publishing, 2 book deals come in 2 varieties. One is like the first-time writer, the first-time novelist, who you're kind of just bidding on as a prospect, and the first book will be a collection of short stories that never sells. I mean, 99 times out of 100, and you're just really bidding on the concept of this future novel that who knows what it'll ever be. Or it's the balancing the books 2 book deal, where it's like, who knows if Mike Pence is certainly not worth $4 million, but if we can make it look like we're spreading it out over 2 books and we don't have to answer for $2 million of those dollars for 5 years, then it's a lot easier to justify. It's a lot easier to make the P&L work for a 2 book deal. Now, if he is somehow relevant in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, that second book may end up being well worth the imaginary money you're paying for it. I think more likely than not, on a contract like this, the second book will either A, never happen, or B, turn out to be something really inconsequential, or something that not inconsequential so much as not worth millions of dollars. I think I said to you, it could be like Mike Pence does meditations on the Psalms or like whatever. I mean, it could just be like any kind of personal small thing. And, it doesn't actually have to be a gigantic thing. I think all that people really care about is his memoir. I mean, his whatever he might say about the Trump years. And then you're hedging your bet by kind of shoving some of that advance money or some of that contract money off into the future.
What he says about the Trump years, and especially what he says about the last couple of weeks of the Trump administration, mm-hmm. That's what we really want to know, right? I mean, Mike Pence was the most loyal soldier in the world. I mean, the single most loyal soldier to Donald Trump outside of like Sebastian Gorka or something like that. And yet he had this deviation from the last couple of weeks where he said, I will help you try to steal the election, but I'm not going to help you try to steal the election in this particular way.
Yeah.
So we want to know, and we have not yet heard why Mike Pence did that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Sebastian Gorka because I'm just kidding. I have nothing to say about him. But Mike Pence, I mean, the problem with this is the same thing as the problem with basically every political book, which is we desperately want to know this, and we will get our answer in the New York Times story that's written 2 weeks before the book comes out. Like, we don't actually need to buy the book to get the answer to the question that we're all thirsting for. And yet, this is how book publishing works. It's how, people will buy the book. People will buy the book because it pops up on their, as an Amazon suggestion. They'll buy it because you always, why do we buy these books? Because we're interested to see if there's maybe more details than we're getting in the news stories about it. We want to, scour it for something else.
And also, it's a Donald Trump book.
Yep.
And we buy Donald Trump books.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a Pence book. It's a Trump book.
Yeah.
And I would think conservatives, if they're not totally mad at Mike Pence, would buy it because buying it is the way you show that you like Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And liberals might buy it because there's some idea that they either want to understand Mike Pence more or they want to understand this small, tiny deviation that the two of them had in the White House.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm sure if you ask Mike Pence, he would probably, tell you that the first book is going to be the memoir of the Trump years, and the second book is going to be basically his campaign book for the next election, right? Everybody has to have a camp. But Those campaign books are more of just sort of a functional thing at this point than having any real meaning. I mean, I don't think there's anything that any candidate, especially Mike Pence, could say in a campaign book that would shift the public perception of him. So it's a matter of just, what do you do outside of the book that makes you or keeps you relevant, that puts you in position to be, a significant player in on the national scene? And at that point, Mike Pence's book with a one-word title, in his face, looking really solemn on the front, then it becomes an interesting, not an interesting book, but a sellable book, but it's those, no one reads those books, even the ones that are good. We're way past people read the Obama books, but that wasn't even really along those lines. They're just so functional. Anyway, kudos to Mike Pence for making $4 million.
You're right that this is absolutely going to have a one-word title. Absolutely. I can't quite think of the word, but it's going to be a word that's also a value, like loyalty, or something like that. Maybe some other illusion, but it's going to be a one-word title that will nod at a greater value that Mike Pence thinks he, and by extension We can go to two words. It could be, you just said them, like it could be greater values or something like that. Or how about this? You want to go for a one word one? How about just Constitution? Ooh, and it's a double meaning there.
Yes, double meaning.
Like the Constitution that I upheld in not helping Trump steal the presidency, and then also the Constitution of me.
Yeah, my commitment.
Yeah. I really like that. What if his second book, he returns to his collegiate interest in cartooning, and it's released horizontally like a Garfield book?
Oh my God, I would love it. I would buy that book. I would be first in line to buy that book. What if that was the memoir? What if the Trump years memoir was just like a sequential memoir by Mike Pence, where the whole thing was just drawn in panels?
Or a graphic novel by
Yeah.
Mike Pence. I would, if that happens, he gets the whole episode of Press Box talking to you. Forget Al Michaels. I want to hear Mike Pence and David Shoemaker.
Wouldn't that book just sell 10 times more copies just because of the just like holy shit factor of the whole thing?
Absolutely.
Whew. Mike
I
Pence.
will commit to buying Mike Pence's graphic novel right now.
Who do we know at Simon & Schuster? Let's get him on the phone. This could be a great, we could be the packagers for this book. I will help ink the drawings and draw the panels for him.
This could be the best thing since Teenage Mutant Senate Turtle. Really could. Sometimes, David, we get questions from famous media members who do not want to be named on the Press Box. So this one is from Mr. Media X. I think Mr. Media X has appeared in this mailbag before. Mr. Media X asks, what do you make of the phenomenon of newspapers and magazines showing and people reacting to print front pages and covers on social media? There is symbolism in what publications choose to put out front for sure, but it seems kind of quaint in the smartphone tablet era that a bunch of people with no intention of reading a print copy of the newspaper are still loudly arguing over print headlines and photos and placement decisions that many times have no bearing on the digital product. Is this a lot of fighting over nothing, or does the old page still got it?
I think the old page still got it, still has it. I think everybody, even if they don't pay attention to this stuff, probably noticed at some point in the past, 3 years or something like that, maybe longer, 5 years, when kind of everybody started just attaching random photos to tweets to try to get better, interaction. People they respond to tweets with photos more than just the tweets with words, right? And I think that this is sort of taking that one step further. It's like making the whole premise of the tweet in a graphic, and so it draws people in, and it also has that, like, listen, how many we spent our whole lives looking at newspaper front pages and headlines and stuff, and not really having any venue or any forum for commenting on them. You always talk to your wife or your friends, or you joke about it in your head. This really feels like your chance to engage and to sort of like top edit a real newspaper or magazine, whatever, in real time. It's sort of irresistible.
I will say that the New Yorker cover in the Twitter era started to feel a little like the Colbert monologue. Like, it was very Orange Man bad and chasing Twitter clout every week. I didn't need to go back to the Mr. Sean thing where you just opened the New Yorker and it was a field of wildflowers in March.
Yeah.
Like, we're probably beyond that. It probably has to grab you in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt a little similar week to week.
When we saw it, yeah, I'm sure that was definitely true.
I do find it interesting, as Mr. Media X notes, that we are all applauding these things on Twitter, but we're not necessarily subscribing to these things.
Mm-hmm.
So like I see all the time, we had the LA Times one, I think in the last episode of the podcast. Oh my gosh, great headline by the LA Times. Oh, excuse me, sir. Do you subscribe to the LA Times? Because the way you could reward them for those funny headlines is to actually pay for the newspaper and make sure that those editors and copy editors still have jobs in a couple of years. I see the same thing with Time Magazine covers all the time, which are also, by the way, chasing Twitter applause. It is a little weird to see those held up as kitsch items and then people don't actually pay for the thing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think when you, part of the goal, regardless of how many people are paying, is just if you get the name of your periodical out in front of a bunch of people and like two of them are like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to subscribe to the LA Times, then that's a win, right? I mean, if just like a tiny amount are like reminded to subscribe, even if you're not gaining a whole bunch of a new audience, I think that's got to be helpful on some level. But yeah, I don't know.
One more from Mr. Media X. For a hit of warm nostalgia, can you tell us about the craziest media party you went to and why it was great? Bonus points if you got kicked out of one or barred at the door. You and I were regulars at the Paris Review
I was
party.
going to say the Paris Review parties were like the closest thing to like a movie literary party, right? I mean, it was just sort of like in a office loft space and had a kind of people all up and down the food chain of the publishing world. Everybody, imbibing gratuitously and generally having a good time. Finding
Who's the
places
most famous person that was at those parties now?
Oh, I don't even remember. I mean, book famous, literary famous it seemed like a really big deal back then. I don't know. Do you remember anybody?
Well, at least one of them has been canceled, so I'm not going to mention that one. Ben Moser was at those parties. Biographer of Susan Sontag.
Sure.
Is that book famous?
Yeah, but to me at the time, it was like whoever the new novelist of note was always seemed like the most famous. So I don't know. I honestly don't remember who the most long-standing one. But yeah, those parties were memorable, if not too, the specifics aren't too memorable. The early days of N+1 parties, I remember. I don't know if fondly is the right word, but I do dimly remember them.
Yeah,
no commentary on
those
N+1.
guys were there,
but they were just sort of like the the Bushwick counterpoint to the Paris Review parties. And but yeah, I mean, I don't know. We never got kicked out of anything. Never got barred at the door, I don't think. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sit here and act like it wasn't fun. It wasn't like a cool phase of life, but I don't have any like lasting memories, I don't think. Do you?
The one I remember was 2008. I had to look this up. I got invited to the 10th anniversary ESPN magazine party.
Yeah. Yes.
Which was
okay,
somewhere.
I remember this a little bit. Go on.
You didn't come for some reason. I don't know if you were busy that night or what, but it was in Manhattan. And it was at one of those clubs that has like 3 levels on top of one another, but there's like a hole in so you can see all the levels, and then there's a band at the bottom. And the band ESPN, the magazine, paid to come was Third Eye Blind. Like,
it's amazing.
This is talk about another era of media. 10th anniversary of ESPN, the magazine, they paid for Third Eye Blind to come. And I just remember me and Tommy Craig sitting on like the 3rd level, leaning over, going, "Play Semi-Charm Kind of Life. Come on. Let's do it." And ESPN leadership kind of wandering around. Somewhere that will be written as like one of the last moments of magazines as we knew them.
Those magazines, even when we were coming up, the magazines were still the ones throwing around like the crazy money. I remember going to like, coming as like a tag along to what GQ or whoever's like holiday party, or they would like rent out like piano, like the entire bar, like a notable bar in the Lower East Side, and put on somebody on the stage that was like an actual band you would want to see, and that kind of thing. I guess if you want to do publishing broadly defined, like in talking about the bands playing and stuff, there's like they used to have these like epic closing night parties at the Book Expo week that were just like they would just rent out a giant venue and just like have just a bash. But that's that's a whole different thing.
By the way, ESPN magazine 10th anniversary, the closing bash at Book Expo. How crazy does David Nye's 20 sound? Let me tell you. Wasn't exactly Haight-Ashbury, was it?
Where were we that you and I were at some reception? Was it like a book party? Oh, was it like for those guys have all the fun? I just remember you and I awkwardly talking to Bob Lee for about 10 minutes.
It was those guys have all the fun. God, this is already sounding so pathetic. I'm going to change the subject. All right, David, time for the overworked Twitter joke of the week, where we celebrate a gag that was so obvious that all of media Twitter made it at exactly the same time. Send your nominees to @thepressboxpod, where they are always gratefully received. David, I regret to inform you that Dr. Drew is at it again.
Oh, no.
On Monday, he tweeted about vaccine passports. Vaccinations are important, and I encourage everyone to get a COVID vaccine. But how would you feel if international travel also required other vaccinations? Note to Dr. Drew, have you ever traveled international? Have you ever been required to get a vaccine or seen people showing proof that they've had vaccines when they go through customs? This actually happens. That prompted someone to tweet, David, name a doctor you respect more than Dr. Drew. Would you like to hear some of the answers?
Please.
Dr. Beverly Crusher from Star Trek The Next Generation. Dr. Teeth from The Muppets. Love Dr. Teeth. Doc McStuffins, for all you young parents out there. The Doctor of Thugonomics. That's a WrestleMania reference.
That's John Cena, yes.
And someone also tweeted, Dr. Drew is the 5th out of 5 doctors. Thanks to our pal, Andrew 3000, for that. A lot of people weighing in on the aforementioned Mike Pence book deal. It was an overworked Twitter joke to write, this book won't have a spine. Thanks to Andrew Brennan. And finally, David, it is genuinely Infrastructure Week in America. Not just a bit this time on Twitter, really Infrastructure Week. Joe Biden has proposed a $2 trillion plan, and already there's a big battle over what exactly infrastructure means. Do you want to hear some of the best jokes about what it might mean?
Oh my God, please, yes.
My tweets are infrastructure. Nachos are infrastructure. Ranch dressing is infrastructure. The pre-Disney Star Wars movies are infrastructure. And finally, M-dashes are infrastructure. If you think recurring podcast bits are also infrastructure, congrats. You made the overworked Twitter joke of the week.
This episode of The Press Box is brought to you by 3M. You probably know 3M for Scotch tape and Post-it notes, but did you know that 3M is also a leading provider of personal protective equipment and medical solutions for healthcare workers and first responders? Since the outbreak, 3M has accelerated production of N95 respirators, disinfectants, and hand sanitizer, helping to support the critical needs of those on the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis. 3M's plants are operating 24/7, producing more than 95 million respirators per month in the United States. 3M is also supporting communities around the world with cash and product donations through humanitarian aid partners, including a $10 million donation to Direct Relief's COVID-19 Fund for Community Health, providing community health centers with direct financial aid to support healthcare workers. 3M Science, applied to life. Learn how 3M is helping the world respond to the COVID-19 pandemic at 3m.com/COVID.
This episode is brought to you by the Volvo XC60 Recharge Plug-in Hybrid. 8,409,600. That's how many breaths the average person takes in a year. When driving the Volvo XC60 Recharge Plug-in Hybrid with the available advanced air cleaner, you can help protect those precious breaths, including the 8 you'll take while listening to this ad. The car you trust to protect your family now helps protect their future. The Volvo XC60 Recharge Plug-in Hybrid. For everyone's safety. Learn more at volvocars.com/US.
This episode is brought to you by Casper. The new Casper Cooling Collection has everything you need to help you sleep cool all night long. Casper's mattresses with new snow technology, hyperlight sheets, lightweight duvets, and breathable mattress protector are all designed to work together to prevent overheating and keep you cool and comfortable. Their Wave Hybrid Snow Mattress keeps you cool for over 12 hours, pulling heat away from your body for sustained temperature regulation, a cool-to-the-touch feeling, and a much-improved tomorrow. Casper's breathable mattress protector improves the coolness of the bed even further by allowing air to flow between your body and mattress. And as always, Casper offers free shipping and free returns. Focus on tomorrow. Let Casper handle the rest. Explore all Casper products, mattresses, sheets, pillows, and more at casper.com.
All right, a little more listener mail in the notebook dump. Nephew Kyle, the one and only Nephew Kyle, one of our biggest supporters here at the Press Box, wants us to talk about Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce, if you are not a sports person, former Boston Celtic NBA champion, and for our purposes here, ESPN analyst, put out an Instagram live video over the weekend. It showed Pierce and his pals, I was struggling for the verb here, cavorting with women in swimsuits. Would you accept cavorting?